Did you know that one of the most expensive movies ever made almost never got finished? Cleopatra, made in 1963, cost more money than any film before it. The movie was so big, so wild, and so crazy that people thought it would destroy the entire film industry. But instead, it became a legend. This is the story of a film that nearly broke everything. And somehow, it changed movies forever. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about Cleopatra. Fact number 20. The budget grew bigger than any movie ever made. When the studio first planned Cleopatra, they thought it would cost around $2 million. That sounds like a lot of money, right? But then something crazy happened. The director changed, the actors changed, the location changed. Suddenly, the budget became $5 million. Then $10 million, then $20 million. By the time they finished filming, the movie cost $44 million. That was more than the total cost of building a small city back then. People in Hollywood were terrified. They thought the studio would go bankrupt. The studio executives were sweating at night, wondering if they had made the biggest mistake in movie history. Nobody had ever spent that much money on a single movie before. It looked like a disaster waiting to happen. Fact number 19. Elizabeth Taylor got paid more than any actor. Before the studio hired Elizabeth Taylor to play Cleopatra, she was already the biggest star in the world. Her beauty was famous everywhere. But here is the wild part. They paid her $1 million for the role. $1 million. In 1963. That was an unbelievable amount of money. No actor had ever been paid that much before. Some people got angry. They said it was unfair. They said one person should not make that much money. But Elizabeth Taylor was Elizabeth Taylor. She was worth it to the studio because people would pay money just to see her face on the screen. The studio was desperate. They needed something, or someone, to make this movie work. Elizabeth Taylor was their answer. She was the most expensive actress in the world, and she knew it. Fact number 18. The costume designer created 10,000 individual pieces. Imagine making clothes for a single actor. Now imagine making 10,000 individual pieces of clothing. That is what the costume designer did for Cleopatra. 10,000 pieces. Some costumes took weeks just to make one outfit. The beads alone took forever to sew by hand. The gold thread was so expensive that the studio kept strict records of every single inch. Workers had to count the beads before and after every scene. If even a few beads were missing, they would notice. The costumes were so heavy that Elizabeth Taylor could barely move in some of them. She had to learn how to walk, sit, and stand in a completely different way. It was like wearing armor made of jewels and silk. The costumes were beautiful, but they were also a prison. What looked stunning on screen was uncomfortable and difficult in real life. Fact number 17. They built an entire city just for the movie. The director decided he did not want to film in Italy anymore. He wanted to film in Egypt, but Egypt did not have the right movie studios, so the studio did something incredible. They built a complete movie city in Rome, Italy. This was not just a small set. This was an entire working city with streets, buildings, docks, and temples. Workers built it from scratch. It took months. It took thousands of workers. Some people called it the most expensive movie set ever built. The city had electricity, water systems, and transportation. When you walked on the set, you felt like you had traveled back in time to ancient Egypt. But it was all fake. It was all built just for this one movie. Once filming ended, they took it all down. Today, those buildings are gone. It is like the ancient Egypt they built disappeared forever, just like the real Cleopatra did. Fact number 16. The script changed so many times that actors didn't know their lines. Nobody could agree on what the movie should be about. The director and the writers kept fighting. One writer would write scenes. Then another writer would change them. Then another writer would change them again. The script was never finished. Actors showed up to film scenes without knowing what they were supposed to say. Elizabeth Taylor would arrive on set in the morning and learn her lines just before cameras started rolling. Sometimes she had only 30 minutes to memorize an entire scene. Imagine trying to act when you do not even know what you are saying. Some actors got frustrated, some got angry. But Elizabeth Taylor was a professional. She memorized her lines quickly and delivered them perfectly. Other actors struggled. They would forget lines in the middle of important scenes. The director would yell, "Cut," and they would try again. It was chaotic. It was unprofessional. But somehow the final movie still worked. The actors were so talented that even this crazy situation could not stop them. Fact number 15. The director quit, and then a new director took over. The original director was Ruben Mamoulian. He had a vision for the movie, but the studio did not agree with his vision. They thought he was moving too slowly. They thought he was spending too much money. After a few months of filming, the studio fired him. Just like that. All his work was thrown away. A new director named Joseph L. Mankiewicz took over. He was a famous director, but he had a different style. He wanted to change everything. This was a huge problem. The actors had to relearn their characters. The sets had to be redesigned. The entire movie had to be restarted. Thousands of hours of filming were deleted. Months of work disappeared. It was like tearing down a house you had been building and starting from scratch. This cost millions of extra dollars. This added years to the production. Nobody was happy. But Mankiewicz was determined to make the movie his own. He believed in the project even when everyone else doubted it. Fact number 14. It rained on set and they could not stop filming. One day, while they were filming an important outdoor scene, it started to rain. Heavy rain, the kind that ruins everything. But the director decided to keep filming anyway. He ordered the cameras to keep rolling. The actors were soaking wet. Their costumes were getting ruined. The makeup was running down their faces. Elizabeth Taylor was shivering, but she did not complain. She kept acting. The scene they filmed that rainy day became one of the most beautiful moments in the movie. The water made the lighting look magical. The rain added emotion to the scene. Sometimes accidents create art. Sometimes chaos creates magic. What was supposed to be a disaster became something special. The studio could have stopped. They could have waited for sunshine. But they took a chance. That chance paid off. Not everything was planned. Not everything was controlled. Sometimes the best moments in movies happen by accident. Fact number 13. The love story between Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Started during filming before Cleopatra, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton knew each other, but they were not close. Burton was a serious actor. Taylor was a movie star. They were different kinds of famous people, but when they started filming scenes together, something changed. They spent hours in costumes, in the heat, under bright lights. They learned each other's rhythms. They learned how the other person thought and moved. Day after day, they were together. They studied each other. Something grew between them. It was not just acting. It was real chemistry, real connection, real attraction. By the time filming ended, they had fallen in love. They started dating during the movie. This was shocking to everyone. Elizabeth Taylor was already married. The news made headlines everywhere. People were scandalized. Religious leaders complained. But Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton did not care. They continued their relationship. Eventually, Taylor got divorced. Then she married Burton. Their love story began on the set of Cleopatra. A movie about an ancient queen became the place where two real people found each other. Life imitated art. Fact number 12. The entire movie kept getting shut down for days. The production was so chaotic that it kept stopping and starting. Elizabeth Taylor got sick with pneumonia and had to rest for weeks. Richard Burton got injured and could not film. The weather was bad. The sets were not ready. The script was not finished. Every few days something went wrong. The director would announce, "We are shutting down for 2 weeks." The actors would leave. The crew would wait. The machines would stop. Then everyone would come back and start again. This happened over and over. It was like a movie that refused to get finished. Investors were panicking. Studios were losing patience. The financial officers were pulling their hair out. But somehow everyone kept going. They believed in the project, even though it was falling apart. It was like building a bridge while it keeps collapsing. Every time you fix one side, the other side breaks. But the builders did not give up. They kept rebuilding. They kept fighting. Fact number 11. Real gold and real jewels were used in the costumes. The costume designer did not use fake gold or plastic jewels. She used real materials, real gold, real diamonds, real pearls, real emeralds. The costumes cost hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the materials. Insurance companies had to follow the actors around to make sure nothing was stolen. Bodyguards stood near the costume racks all night. If even one diamond went missing, there would be a disaster. The jewelry was so valuable that the studio treated it like treasure. Because it was treasure, imagine wearing an outfit that costs as much as a house. Imagine walking on set, knowing that your costume could feed a family for a year. The actors were careful. They knew the weight of what they were wearing was not just physical weight. It was the weight of responsibility. It was the weight of money. It was the weight of the studio's desperation. Every piece of gold meant something. Every jewel meant something. This was not costume design. This was financial risk worn as clothing. Fact number 10. The movie took 4 years to film. Instead of 1 year, when the studio started, they thought they would finish in 1 year, maybe 2 years at the most. But the movie took 4 years. 4 years of filming, 4 years of workers showing up, 4 years of paying salaries, 4 years of renting equipment, 4 years of Elizabeth Taylor in costumes, 4 years of chaos. Some scenes were filmed and then refilmed. Some scenes were filmed and then deleted. Some scenes were filmed multiple times because the director was not happy. The actors grew older during filming. Elizabeth Taylor's hairstyles changed. Richard Burton looked different, but their characters had to look the same in every scene. This created impossible problems. Hairstylists had to carefully recreate hairstyles from years earlier. Makeup artists had to match skin tones from previous shots. It was like trying to freeze time and then unfreeze it perfectly. The 4 years felt like forever to everyone involved. People started making jokes. They said the movie would never finish. They said it would be like this forever. But finally, after 4 years, it was done. Fact number 9. The special effects were cutting-edge technology for 1963. The special effects team used the newest technology available. They created explosions. They created battles with thousands of soldiers. They created scenes that had never been filmed before. But everything looked real because it was real or almost real. They used models and painted backgrounds. They used clever camera tricks. They used lighting to create illusions. For 1963, this was incredible. Audiences had never seen anything like it. The technology was so advanced that critics said the special effects were the best part of the movie. The team worked with equipment that was experimental. Some of it was invented just for Cleopatra. The visual effects supervisor was a genius who figured out how to make ancient Egypt look real when they were filming in modern Rome. He used tricks that other directors had not thought of. He created magic with cameras and lights and patience. Years later, film schools would teach his techniques. His work on Cleopatra became the foundation for future filmmaking. Fact number 8. The director edited the movie himself for 6 months. After filming finished, the director had to edit everything together. He had filmed for 4 years. He had thousands of hours of footage. He had to choose what to keep and what to delete. The director spent 6 months locked in an editing room, watching footage and making decisions. He would watch a scene 40 times, 50 times, 100 times. He would study every moment, every gesture, every look. He wanted to make sure that the final movie told the right story. Editing is like sculpting. You start with a giant block of stone and you chip away until you find the statue inside. The director was carving a 4-hour movie out of thousands of hours of footage. His eyes got tired. His brain got tired. But he did not give up. He made cut after cut. He removed scenes that other people loved. He kept scenes that other people hated. He trusted his instincts. Finally, after 6 months, the movie was complete. It was 4 hours and 12 minutes long, the longest movie most people had ever seen. But the director believed that every second was necessary. Chewy. Fact number 7. The movie premiere was delayed because it was not finished. The studio had already advertised the premiere date. Posters were printed, tickets were sold, the date was set, but the movie was not finished editing. The director asked for more time. The studio said no. They said the premiere had to happen on the announced date. So the director worked like crazy. He worked day and night. He brought his editors coffee at midnight. He made them work faster. But there was not enough time. So on premiere night, the movie that premiered was not the final version. The director made more changes after the premiere. He removed scenes. He added scenes. He changed the ending slightly. So technically, every copy of Cleopatra that people watched was different from the premiere version. The first people to see the movie saw something that was not quite finished. They saw a work in progress. This was embarrassing for the studio, but it was also kind of honest. Movies are never really finished. Directors are always tweaking them, always wondering if they could have done something differently. Cleopatra just made that process visible. Fact number 6. The movie made back its money, but it took years. After spending $44 million, the movie had to make that money back. At first, it did not seem like it would happen. When the movie came out, critics were mixed. Some loved it, some hated it. But audiences showed up. They wanted to see what the fuss was about. They wanted to see Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. They wanted to see the most expensive movie ever made. Slowly, the movie made money. And then it made more money. And then it made even more money. It took years. The movie was in theaters for a long time. It was re-released in different versions. It was shown on television. It was shown in different countries. Slowly, the profit grew. Eventually, the movie made back its budget and earned profits. But it took longer than anyone expected. The studio almost lost faith. The investors almost gave up. But the movie survived. It became not just the most expensive movie ever made, but also one of the highest-earning movies ever made. The chaos had a happy ending. Fact number 5. Real historical consultants. Advised on every scene. The director wanted the movie to be historically accurate, so he hired real historians and Egyptologists. These were experts who studied ancient Egypt for their entire lives. They visited the set every day. They checked every detail. They corrected mistakes. If an actor wore a piece of jewelry wrong, they would notice. If a building looked slightly off, they would know. They helped the director understand how Cleopatra actually lived, what she actually ate, how she actually dressed, how she actually thought. The actors listened to these experts. They wanted to play real people, not cartoon versions of real people. So they learned history, they studied ancient languages, they learned about ancient customs. Elizabeth Taylor spent hours with historians, asking questions. She wanted to understand Cleopatra's mind. Richard Burton studied Cleopatra's lover, Mark Antony. He wanted to understand that relationship. The result was a movie that felt real. It felt authentic. You believed that these were real people from a real time period, not actors pretending, but real humans from 2,000 years ago. Fact number 4. The movie influenced fashion for an entire decade. After Cleopatra came out, fashion changed. Designers saw what Elizabeth Taylor wore in the movie and created clothes inspired by it. Jewelry designers created pieces inspired by the costumes. Makeup artists copied the eye makeup. Hairstylists recreated the hairstyles. For years, women wanted to look like Cleopatra. They wanted the golden sandals. They wanted the gold eyeliner. They wanted the jeweled headdresses. Fashion magazines published articles about the Cleopatra look. Stores sold costume jewelry that mimicked the movie's jewelry. The movie became a guide for beauty, a guide for style, a guide for elegance. Elizabeth Taylor became the face of ancient Egyptian fashion. Her makeup artist became famous. Her hairstylist became famous. The costume designer won awards. This was not just a movie about an ancient queen. This was a movie that changed how modern women saw themselves. It changed what they thought was beautiful. It changed what they wanted to wear. Fashion and film had always been connected, but Cleopatra took that connection to a new level. The movie was not just entertainment. It was a cultural force. Chat. Fact number 3. The script was written by multiple famous writers. Nobody could agree on who should write the script, so instead of choosing one writer, they hired several. Different writers wrote different sections. One famous writer named Joseph L. Mankiewicz, the same person who became director, wrote large parts of the script. Another writer named Ranald McDougall rewrote whole sections. Another writer named Sidney Buchman contributed ideas. It was like having 4 or 5 chefs trying to cook the same meal. Everyone had different ideas about what the food should taste like. The writers argued, they debated, they rewrote each other's work. Sometimes they agreed, sometimes they did not. The final script was a combination of all their ideas. It was messy, it was inconsistent, but it was also interesting. Each writer brought their own voice, their own style. The result was a script that had depth, it had layers. Multiple perspectives from multiple creative minds. The actors benefited because they had rich material to work with. The dialogue was smart. The emotions were real. The story had complexity. Sometimes chaos in the creative process creates something greater than if one person had controlled everything. Fact number 2. The box office. Success saved the studio from bankruptcy. Before Cleopatra came out, the studio was in trouble. They had spent enormous amounts of money on this movie. They had spent money on other movies too. They were losing money in other areas of the business. If Cleopatra had failed, the entire studio would have collapsed. The investors were nervous. The employees were worried about their jobs. Everyone was holding their breath. But when Cleopatra made money, it saved everything. The studio survived. The company became profitable again. Employees kept their jobs. Investors got their money back and made profits. The entire studio was saved by one movie. One massive, chaotic, expensive, beautiful movie. Nobody could believe it. They had taken the biggest risk in movie history, and it had paid off. This was not just a success. This was a rescue. This was a miracle. The movie that almost destroyed the studio ended up saving it. Cleopatra was not just entertainment. It was survival. It was the difference between the studio continuing to exist and disappearing forever. Fact number 1. Cleopatra is now considered a masterpiece, even though everyone hated it. At first, when Cleopatra first came out, lots of people criticized it. They said it was too long. They said it was too expensive. They said the script was weak. They said the story was confusing. Critics were harsh. They did not understand why the studio had spent so much money on this film. They did not appreciate the ambition. But something changed over time. As years passed, people watched the movie again. They noticed the beauty. They noticed the performances. They noticed Elizabeth Taylor's incredible acting. They noticed Richard Burton's depth. They noticed the vision. They realized that Cleopatra was not just an expensive mistake. It was art. It was a bold attempt to make something grand and massive and beautiful. It was a director's dream brought to life, no matter the cost. Today, film historians call Cleopatra one of the great films of the 1960s. Universities teach it. Critics praise it. Audiences appreciate it. The movie that people said was a disaster is now seen as a triumph. It took decades, but the world caught up with the vision. What looked like failure was actually courage. What looked like waste was actually investment in art. Bonus fact: the lost scenes and secret versions. Here is something that very few people know. After the premiere, the director kept editing the movie. He would find scenes that he wanted to change. He would find moments he wanted to adjust. Over the years, different versions of Cleopatra existed. Some theater versions were shorter. Some television versions were longer. Some versions had scenes that were cut from other versions. Some scenes were filmed but never included in any official version. These lost scenes are like buried treasure. Film experts have searched for them. Some have been found in archives. Some are probably lost forever. The director's original vision might have been different from what we see today. There might be scenes that would change how we understand the movie. There might be moments that would make us see the characters differently. The mystery of Cleopatra's final version is like an archaeological dig. We are constantly discovering new things about this ancient film. Each discovery teaches us something new. Each version tells a slightly different story. The movie is like an onion with layers. As we peel back the layers, we find new meanings. We find new surprises. The movie keeps giving, even after all these years. So there you have it. 20 incredible facts about one of the most wild, crazy, and amazing movies ever made. Cleopatra was a disaster that became a triumph. It was chaos that created art. It was ambition that refused to fail, even when everything suggested it should. The movie taught us something important. Sometimes the biggest risks create the greatest rewards. Sometimes spending too much money on a crazy idea results in beauty. Sometimes trusting your vision, even when everyone doubts you, pays off. Elizabeth Taylor gave us an unforgettable performance. Richard Burton brought depth and passion. The director had a vision, and he refused to give up on it, no matter how many times the studio wanted to fire him. The costume designer, the cinematographer, the editors, and thousands of workers created magic out of chaos. They proved that filmmaking is not just technology or money. It is heart. It is determination. It is the human spirit refusing to accept failure. Cleopatra reminds us why we love movies. Movies are dreams that become real. Movies are stories that touch our hearts. Movies are proof that impossible things can happen if we believe in them hard enough. If you loved learning these secrets about Cleopatra, please subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we will keep uncovering them, one story at a time. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. Thank you for caring about the stories behind the stories, because that is what makes cinema magical.